Oh, good. I'm glad you didn't take my teleprompter. I brought my teleprompter in case my mind sits back down, and brought these in case my eyes start to sweat. Wow. This is so exciting to see everybody. It's been probably 40 years since I've seen a lot of you. Wow. And I also want to express a heartfelt thanks for everybody that has come out today. I really, really appreciate that. I am Max Taylor's youngest daughter, and most of you know me as Paulette. I was the black sheep. Oh, y'all remember. Matthew 19, verse 26. With God, all things are possible. Have you ever had a positive experience that was so life-changing it stayed with you forever? You see, I've had one of those experiences, and that's why I knew I had to speak today. This is your captain speaking. We're going to experience a little bit of turbulence, so buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but it's okay because we're going to have a nice, smooth landing. Okay? This is a story of forgiveness, love, healing, and miracles. I hope you can relate to some of what I'm going to share, and I hope this story will touch your life like it did mine. One of the happiest days in my life was when I was released from prison. Now, y'all, some looking at me like, oh, she doesn't look like she's been in prison. She looks so normal. If you told me this time last year that I would have been giving Daddy's eulogy, I would have thought you'd lost your ever-loving mind. But before I tell you why, I want to tell you about my daddy, Max Taylor. I knew Daddy's favorite color was turquoise. But there were a couple of other things that I didn't know. And not too long before Daddy died, I asked him if he had a favorite scripture. And he said, no. He said, there's just too many of them I love. I said, well, Daddy, do you have a favorite hymn? And he said, yes, I do. I want you to know my daddy was fearless and adventuresome. He loved parasailing, and he would go up, I remember he would go up on the 700-foot rope, and he took his video camera, and he'd be taking video cameras, you know, and I'm surprised he didn't do bungee jumping back then, but I know Mother would have killed him if he tried to do that. And when he was a young man, he could jump over the hood of a car with ease. I mean, to do it time and time again. This car was like a boat. I mean, you could play volleyball on the hood, and we have pictures to prove it. It was just unbelievable. And when I was a little girl, Mother, you'll remember this, Daddy and I used to ride the giant roller coaster, and we would always get in the front seat, and we'd have our arms straight up in the air, and we'd be just laughing, and it was one of our favorite things to do. Y'all remember when we'd go to Playland Park? Riding horses was a big part of our life. Sometimes I think Daddy would look like John Wayne on a horse, and we spent a lot of time together in the saddle. Daddy had a wicked sense of humor. Oh, now y'all laughing. I got my sense of humor from him. And he had a sense of humor almost about everything, including himself. He said he used to look like a toothpick that swallows grape. He loved to laugh, and he loved a good joke. When I was growing up, he used to tell us little Johnny jokes. Y'all remember those little Johnny jokes when growing up? I remember this one in particular. Little Johnny said, Mommy, I'm tired of going in circles. She said, shut up or I'll nail your other foot to the floor. A couple of years ago, I got a phone call from him. He said, Sugar, that's what he called me when I wasn't in trouble. He said, do you have a problem with me being cremated? And I said, well, no. I said, what does Mother, Don, and Carol think? And he said, well, they're okay with it. And I said, well, I just want to make sure you are okay with it. And I said, well, Daddy, if that's what you want to do, I'm okay with it. He said, he got real serious. He said, well, I want to be buried out at the National Cemetery where Ken is buried. That's Donna's husband, his son-in-law. He said, and I'm hoping that y'all won't forget me and y'all come and visit me just every once in a while. And I said, Daddy, I got a better idea. I said, I'll just take your ashes and put them on the back of my toilet, and I'll come visit you several times a day. I thought he was going to spit Dr. Pepper through his nose. In the words of my dear friend, the late LaShonda Rundles, former world champion of public speaking, we aren't half afraid of dying as we are that no one will ever remember we were ever here. Daddy, we will always remember you were here. How could we not? You know, I always heard that we become like our parents. And as God is my witness, I used to say, I will never do that. You know, sometimes I open my mouth and my mother pops out. I swear, if I can't get in touch with Mother in 2 hours, I'm calling the police, I'm calling the neighbors, I'm worried. And she's laughing. Daddy used to have this very irritating habit of drumming his fingers on the table, and I just wanted to rip his arm out of his socket. It was very interesting the other day. I'm on the phone with customer service. I look down, I'm drumming my fingers on the desk. I thought, oh no, it's true. You know, I learned a lot from Daddy. Like the time when I was about 10 years old, Mother asked me to do the dishes. And then I did something really stupid. I opened my smart mouth and I said, no, I'll do them later. Everything came to a screeching halt. Now he was 6'3". Oh, and I was about, this tall. Oh, when he raised up out of his chair, he looked like Jolly Green Giant. Oh, believe me, he was not very jolly. He said, Paulette, when Mother asks you to do the dishes, you do them when she tells you to. Then he proceeded to set the timer, and I got my first lesson in time management. Years later, Daddy and I spent a lot of time riding the roller coaster. Only this time, it wasn't very much fun. We had a very contentious and rocky relationship. For one thing, I didn't conform very well. I didn't follow the rules and regulations. I was the black sheep of the family, the church, and the school. I was always in trouble. Believe me, I was very familiar with come to Jesus meetings. I went to one almost every day, either at home, church, or school. And it didn't have anything to do with Jesus. It just meant I was in big, big trouble. You know, Mother said God put a special love in a mother's heart so she doesn't kill her children. And I know this is true because I'm still alive today. And now I know why some animals eat their young. There were times that Daddy and I fought like dogs and cats. And putting the two of us in the same room was almost enough to start World War III. You know those fireworks you used to see on the 4th of July? That was me and Daddy. You see, I wanted Daddy to change, and I was going to get that why I was wrong, and I am so sorry, apology from him or else. I agonized and I suffered over this for years. And I couldn't even think about the good memories I had growing up because they were all overshadowed by all the things he had done wrong or I thought he had done wrong. It affected so many areas of my life, including my health and my relationships, and especially with men. And if you don't believe me, ask the man I'm dating right now. He'll tell you. I had pretty much written off our relationship, and I had no hope that it would change. But inside, I desperately wanted peace. And I prayed for an answer, but no answers came. Until I heard the story of Wayne Dyer and how he was able to forgive his dad after abandoning his mother and his family, leaving them in poverty and homeless. And he said he spent years so angry and he wanted to find his dad, and when he found him, he was going to give him a piece of his mind. And he finally found his father's grave. And he said, right then on the spot, he was able to completely forgive his dad. And he said it changed his life. You know, his story really touched me. And I wanted to make peace with Daddy, and I just wanted to patch up the relationship so we could be civilized to each other. But I just kept reliving the past over and over. And one day I had a friend that just got in my face. And she said, how long are you going to keep dragging that baggage into our friendship? How long are you going to keep carrying this around? And I thought, oh, ouch. She's right. And sometimes it takes someone who really cares and who will be honest and tell you the truth. Folks, God works in mysterious ways. I remember this like it was yesterday. I had an image of Daddy come to me. He was cold, he was frail, and very thin. He was reaching out to me with both arms saying, help me. I had never in my life seen him like this. And it really tugged at my heartstrings. I wanted to make peace with him, but I just didn't know how. And I sure wasn't comfortable sitting down with him in person. And I did a lot of soul searching. I kept praying for an answer. I kept thinking there just has to be a way. Finally, I reached out to him by email, and we started communicating that way. And we were able to patch things up and be civilized to each other for a few months, and then there was another explosion. And when I left that day, I thought the next time I see him will be at his funeral. But for some reason, I always left the door open. But I never expected our relationship to mend. Last July, when Mother called and told me he was in the hospital from a silent heart attack, I wanted to go see him. But we decided it was better to wait until after he got home. And I had a little trepidation about going to see him because of all of the stress it might cause him. And I knew this was not the time to start World War III again. I want you to fast forward to August the 9th, when I finally got out of prison. I went over to my parents' house that day to see Daddy and help Mother, and when I got ready to go that evening, I was a little nervous, but stuck my head in the door to say goodbye, and he said, are you leaving? And I said, yeah, Daddy, I got to go home. And he motioned for me to come in, and for some reason, I knew it was okay. So I went in, and I stood by his bed. We chatted for a minute, and I said, Daddy, you don't look like you feel very good. He said, Sugar, I don't feel very swift. Then I had a deja vu moment as he reached out with both arms and wanted to give me a hug. I had seen that image before. So I leaned down to give him a hug, and he wrapped his arms around me so tight, held on, and he said, I love you, Sugar. And in an instant, I could feel all the negative feelings, the hurt and the anger just being washed away. And I said, I love you too, Daddy. And there was complete forgiveness. And my prison sentence had come to an end. In that moment, I honestly felt love and compassion for a man that I hadn't loved in a very long time, and sometimes I almost despised. You see, it no longer mattered what he had done or what had happened in the past or I thought he had done. It no longer mattered. Folks, that was a divine intervention and healing from God. It was one of the greatest gifts and blessings I could ever have received, and one of the happiest days in my life. I also realized that was Daddy's apology. And I cried tears of joy all the way home. Forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. Mark Twain. Over the next 6 months, we had a very loving relationship. And before I would leave him each time, we would say I love you to each other. And whenever I would go over to see him, it was out of love instead of should and obligation. One of the times when Daddy was in the hospital, I spent about 2 hours with him. It was just the two of us. We held hands, watched an old Western on TV. And do you know what we said most of the time? Absolutely nothing. When we couldn't find the words to speak, we let our hearts speak. With a pat on the arm, a loving smile, the squeeze of our hands. During the time Daddy was sick, he would talk about how much he loved Mother, how pretty and sweet she was. He also expressed his gratitude many times for everything that Mother, Donna, Carol, and Larry did for him. His heart had softened, and he transformed into a sweet man. And you know, in some ways, there was a childlike quality to him. Love had built a bridge between our hearts. There were no longer words of hurt and anger, only kindness and love. Folks, our words are like seeds that we can sow to make our lives live on and on in the hearts of others. Are you using your words of immortality to sow seeds of love and kindness? Or are you letting the hurt and the panger and the pride and anger harden your heart? Are you speaking the words that will set you free by letting the love in your heart tell others what truly, truly matters? It hurt me to see this shell of a man struggle just to breathe and talk and only be able to walk a few steps without having to sit down and rest. You know, one of his favorite things to do was for Mother and I to take him to Legacy Park in Arlington. And I'd just reach over and hold his hand. And, you know, he seemed to be just content and happy with just looking at the scenery and living in the present moment. And I sometimes wondered how he could be so peaceful when it was at the end. And now I know. Although Daddy loved life, he was prepared to rise far above the clouds into the welcoming arms of a loving God. Mother told me how he would read his Bible, and one of the scriptures that he read over and over was 2 Corinthians 5, verse 8. I would like to read this scripture to you. We are confident, I say, and willing rather to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord. I was there when he was so grateful to have just a small bowl of soup or just a few bites of avocado. Well, actually, it was more than just a few bites. Daddy wanted avocado for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then he wanted it for a snack in between. And see, after Daddy got sick, he developed this addiction to avocados. And he would call you up, he said, bring me an avocado. And I think he was happier to see the avocado than he was you. And I sure hope there are avocados in heaven, because he will not be a happy camper. Before you lay your head down tonight, think of someone you need to forgive. Who is it in your life that has hurt you, has done you wrong, or someone you love wrong? Or maybe you have wronged someone and done something you're not proud of. I know I certainly have before. Is it a spouse, a family member, a friend, a coworker, or someone from the past? Or perhaps yourself? How long will you carry this baggage from the past into your future? Let me ask you, are you willing to make peace and set yourself free? On January the 6th, Daddy took that nonstop flight to no more heartache, no more pain, and no more suffering. But he left this world knowing he was loved. I would like to recognize my mother, his two oldest daughters, Donna and Carol, and his son-in-law, Larry. I witnessed these four remarkable Christians take care of him the last 6 months of his life with the utmost love, kindness, and compassion. As Mark said, my parents were married 60 years. When I was a little girl, I didn't think people ought to be allowed to live that long. Daddy can't be here for Mother, but he'd be mighty glad if we all would be here for her.